All right, hey guys, welcome back to the Gulf Coast Growth Show. I'm your host, Jason Lee, joined by my co-host, Zeke Smith.
What's up, Jason?
Great to see you today. And we are joined by Mr. Steve Cote, Senior Vice President of Brady, Chapman, Holland and Associates, and the Secretary of the Economic Alliance Executive Board. Steve, good to see you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So, Steve, you're no stranger to the camera because you've kind of a big deal now with your podcast, but we'll get into that.
He's like a 4-time guest of this show. I mean,
yeah,
we launched his career.
That's right.
Yeah, if we're being honest, you're welcome.
You're getting the royalty checks, right?
We are your origin stories.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, we're going to talk a little bit about that in what you've been doing, and really kind of how your career overlaps into the number of organizations that you serve, and then you're going to hit a little bit about some of these. Some of the legislation that's going on with these, they call them nuclear. It sounds horrifying, nuclear verdicts.
Yeah.
But it is horrifying because I think it affects everybody's rates, right?
Oh, 100%.
So we're all being subjected to that. And so we're going to just kind of dovetail into a couple of different things. But so as we dive in, let's start with the Economic Alliance. I know you've been here for a while. Well, let's tell us your story. Like how did you get involved?
The two people that don't know Steve.
Yeah,
exactly. Tell us your background.
Well, I mean,
how did you get plugged in? When did you start doing it?
So it's interesting. Yeah. Grew up over here in Deer Park, graduated Deer Park High School, went to San Jac, went to U of H. And made a career change. I worked overseas for about 10 years and then made a career change once we started having a family. Started working with Ken Phelps, Ken Phelps, local State Farm agent, which got me into insurance. And Ken introduced me to Jan Lawler at the time, who was Chad Burke's position here at the Economic Alliance, and said, here, I want you to meet, Jan, and, they're very much involved in a lot of things that help, commerce happen in the area. And I thought, okay. And so I started getting plugged in and visiting. And then from there, decided to run for city council and got elected on city council. And what's really interesting about city council is you realize, the city only makes money from property taxes and, water and garbage collection or whatever fees they charge, the residents, or economic development. Right. In other words, develop more land, do more things, that you can bring in more revenue. Well, if you grew up in a family-owned business like I did, it's like, you're the last one that gets paid, so you want to sell more. Right. That's what my dad's big thing is don't worry about it, just sell more, we'll be fine. And so when you get into city government and you start looking around, you're thinking, hey, Pasadena's built out. What do we do? Right. Well, that's right. There's this group called the Economic Alliance, and they help with all that economic development. And so I really got passionate about it and got involved. And it was the one core thing that I enjoyed most about trying to bring more to Pasadena, whether it's on the industrial side or commercial, because there was no more rooftops that were going to be developed for homes and things like that. Right. So that was essentially it. And once I got plugged in, Chad came over, became president and CEO, and he's very involved, and so it's been wonderful from that standpoint and learning. Never worked on the industry side, so I don't know the technical side of operations and all the different plastics and everything. Know enough about it. But it grew up on the community side of, what supports that industry, how you're impacted by the jobs and the opportunities there, but then what do you have in terms of providing for industry that they need for support? And so that's what my mom and dad's business did. Great. From that standpoint.
And then now you serve on the executive board as secretary.
Yep.
Walk us through really some of the key focus, some of the key mission items that you guys are focused on this year.
Yeah, a lot of it is direction in terms of, what is most relevant. We recognize, and we've always described the alliance as the glue or the connector for everybody. So you think in terms of industry. So they're all, along the Houston Ship Channel doing their thing, but then there's legislation that impacts them. So how does that legislation impact them in terms of their industry and providing jobs and commerce and growth? But then on the flip side, how does it impact the community? So then you have like 13 chambers of commerce all tied in with the alliance. You have direct members that are vendors and things that service and support the industry, and they're members of the alliance. And so from the e-board's position is what are the most critical needs in terms of industry, the community? How is the legislation impacting that? So you do a lot of initiatives that involve going to Austin, going to DC, recognizing what bills and things that are going to that are being worked on that need to be brought to the top of the stack, so that this way, our area can be supported properly. It could be environmental, it could be whatever the case may be, and so. So a lot of the initiatives we look at there are in the executive board. Chad brings it all out, lays it all out, and then we review it, discuss it, and then it gets carried over into the board of directors, and then gets voted for policy to move forward with the association.
Gotcha. And then you serve here. You also are involved in the Association of Builders and Contractors. Walk us through how you glean wisdom from both organizations and then use those to go better serve your clients, serve the people that you're involved with.
Well, it's interesting because ABC carries over really well with the Economic Alliance. And, I think about probably the unique thing about ABC is about half the members of the construction companies there are industrial contractors.
Right.
So they very much are all working on all these industrial sites, supporting these industrial sites. And so really, I think it was about 15 years ago, Russell Hamley was the president of ABC, and he was an Army Corps cadet graduate from A&M, and so was Chad Burke. And so I introduced the two, and they got to talking and saying, hey, we need to work together on a lot of different projects. And so that initially, Chad had just come on board over at the Alliance, and that really started the correlation with ABC and the Alliance. And so when there's a reverse trade show, that either, the Alliance would do here and have all the plant facilities actually be the exhibitors, and the contractors want to meet who those guys are, they do it. And ABC does the same thing. They have all the general contractors do an exhibit. We've had the Alliance bring out some plant managers and facility directors to come over and see and meet the contractors that are putting on an exhibit as well. And so between the two, the legislation correlates very similarly. They recognize what's needed and they support it. Yeah. And so it's really very complementary to have the two working together hand in hand because they all want the same thing. They all want safety for their employees. They want good, safe environment, at the facilities. They want the community to thrive and have all the resources it needs for them to have locations here and support everything. So it's a good win-win for both organizations. And so we actually at Brady, Chapman, Holland Associates, we're already members of ABC. And so I brought in, having grown up in this area, knowing the Alliance, and BCH was already involved with ABC, so I just plugged in.
Gotcha. And then how do you use, you're serving here, and you get in and you obviously use your experience to come in and add value to both organizations. But then how do you use the organizations to turn back around and add value to the clients that you serve?
Well, every client I serve with are high-risk companies.
Yeah.
So the issues that they have is, safe work environment. Mm-hmm. So both of these organizations have resources and support, and whether you call them task force groups or committees to help support them from a safety standpoint and have peer-to-peer relationships and understanding, what is the latest and best practices for what they're doing. Same thing goes with contractual liability. They're all signing contracts. They're all dealing with industry or hiring each other. And both those organizations support those needs. And so, whether you want to look at it from a networking standpoint and bringing members in that aren't familiar with ABC or aren't familiar with the Alliance, and they come in, they become members, and getting them plugged in and getting to the support and benefits of all those resources, that's the big win-win I like to bring to my clients, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for how can I improve? How can I be better? How do I know what's the latest and greatest that's happening in our industry? And a lot of my clients are in construction. A lot of them are industrial construction.
And he was not going to do it himself, so I'll toot his horn for him too. Steve's not only board members of both organizations, but has also been a speaker and expert on some of these things. I know ABC, he and I serve on the board together, and he's done some workshops for whether they're customers, but they're just members of ABC. Yep. I'm sure he's picked up a few customers through his involvement, but doing some of these risk awareness or how to do contracts or whatever. So we do some continuing education, if you will, for both organizations. So I think that's always a value, is getting involved. You're on the board.
Yep.
And that can be just a seat sometimes for people, as we know. Yep. But actually giving back some of your expertise is valuable for him, his organization, his name, but also the organization itself, right? Giving back some of those knowledge and resources.
Were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, and it's the same reason why when we encourage or bring somebody to one of these associations to join, the very thing you tell them is get plugged in, get involved, join a committee. Well, you can't say that and not do it. And so it's, so you get what you put into it. And so
100%. Yeah. Agreed. So for you, how have you benefited from the member base? They talk a lot about members doing business with members, and so we don't have to talk about like clients that you've gotten from the organization. But let's talk about how you've leveraged some of the resources. I know I've leveraged, you're one of them, right? I've leveraged you as a relationship to help my clients. How have you leveraged the tools and the resources from the network, from the community to go out and serve your clients?
Well, it ultimately it's business doing business, people doing business with people.
Right.
And so just being involved and knowing more people and being able to bring those connections and those relationships, that's the number one benefit across the board.
Right.
If you're it's a term that gets overused a lot, but if you are a trusted advisor to one of your clients, many times I get asked, man, who do we work through some different electrical contractors, who do you know out there that you deal with in some of your associations or whatever the case may be, or it could be a CPA or whatever, but they know if you're plugged in and you've got a lot of relationships and you're connected and doing a lot of things, they come to you and ask you for support and connections and relationships that can help them.
Yeah. And there's a comfort with presence, right? So seeing Steve at things, they may not know who he is or what he does, but it's like he becomes innately become more trustworthy because like I've seen Steve at everything.
Yep.
And he's here. So he's more of it's a familiarity principle. So I'm familiar with Steve. So I'll call him and ask him, right? And connect the dots. So I think that's one thing is being a part and being present and showing up and figuring out, you said this countless times on the show, like figure out where you can plug in, whether it's giving your knowledge back or just sitting here and listening.
Yeah.
I know we did that early on in my career at both organizations, just sit back, shut up and listen and try to learn. I am a kid of the industry and grew up here as well, but didn't work on my tools or in the trades. So sitting back, shut up, listen and learn is really the way I think you gain the most value and you can leverage that. Cause then I just heard that. Like you said that. We'll go and listen to a talk and then you leverage it the next day in your business. I just talked to Steve and he brought up some new legislation. Tomorrow using that with a customer.
Absolutely.
I think that's
business acumen.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just trying to imagine you shutting up.
Thanks, Jason.
I'm just like I'm imagining
you can't get there.
It's a tough.
I have not yet shied away from a microphone.
Yeah,
that's fair. Not yet. Someday.
Not that I want you to shut. I'm just saying,
you,
like I am the world of your being like I'm just going to sit back and not say anything.
Well, I exaggerated a bit.
Yeah, you hear the straight.
I
listen.
He's
stabbing himself on the leg with his pen,
sitting on my hands.
Say it.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Somebody's
over there like. Braveheart.
Yeah.
I gotta say it.
So, whatever.
So one of the things I think is really cool is your, you are plugged in and you've built this life around the industry, your brand, what you're doing in the community, and it's a life of service. It really is. So you serve your clients, you serve the community, you serve your family, you serve your peers. That's who Steve Cote is. And then you decided to go out and tell more stories by creating a podcast, right?
Yeah.
It's cute. I've seen it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But
I know Chad's going to get a kick out of it.
No, but well,
so tell us in all seriousness.
Yeah.
Tell us what fired this up? Where did this come from? What did you want to gain out of it, and what are you doing with it?
We inspired him. We already talked about it. Obviously,
that's right.
Yeah. It's like he saw himself on camera.
It's a spinoff, right? It's literally a spinoff from a hit show.
Yeah. But I will give you a lot of credit from a question you asked me when I first started considering it, which I thought was very important. But yeah, it all started originally. There was a banquet event for the Alliance coming up. And Chad was supposed to do a fireside chat with Russell Ybarra, and he suddenly couldn't go. And so he said, "Hey, do you mind doing the fireside chat with Russell Ybarra?" Russell Ybarra owns, Gringos and Johnny Tamales. Jimmy Changas. Johnny Tamales is his brother. And he had just wrote a book, The Enchilada Entrepreneur. Right. And so he's promoting that, and so we had that set up. And so I said, "Sure, I've never done one really, but it's kind of like this, right? It's basically sit down and talk through some different things." And so I was so worried about getting in there and sitting down with him, and they had laid out 45 minutes in front of like 500 people, and I'm thinking I'm going to run out of content. I'm going to, I've read his book like twice, going through it all and everything just to make sure I had.
We're going to eat some food.
Exactly. Doing some taste testing.
Yeah,
but man. We got through 45 minutes so fast, and I had 10 other questions to ask him about. I grew up in a family-owned business, And it was just eating at me to really dive in and talk through as to where, okay, you grew up in a family-owned business, so you naturally started your own business. But what if you didn't have a family-owned business? Did you have that DNA that was going to lead you to that? And then it brought back the questions of my dad started his own business, and he didn't grow up in a family business. So then the next day I'm sitting down with my dad going, Dad, what made you start the business? I'm quizzing him, and next thing you know it, I started going, there's a lot of developing entrepreneurs that don't know whether to take the plunge or not and try it. And so I thought, it'd be kind of neat to do a podcast. I work with business owners, I talk to a lot of them. I said, and just start interviewing these guys and say, hey, how did it all start? And so then you came to me because I said, hey, I'm thinking about this podcast. And you go, well, wait a minute. Is this for profit or passion? And I said, oh. And I said, well, what do you mean for profit? You're just trying to be out there and sell. And, I said, no, I think it's passion. And you said, okay, it's good. It's good that you're aware of that because that'll be what drives you. And so I said, great. And and then once I kind of had that in my mind and started thinking about it, boom, I started running from that standpoint. And so, I'm actually going to College Station in a couple of weeks to visit with Ben Metter. Ben Metter staff.
Oh, wow.
Lives out there. He's been a longtime friend and neighbor of mine for years before he moved. And he is one of the founders of the Alliance.
That's right.
But it used to be called SEED, Southeast Economic Development Corporation.
Wow.
Yeah,
and
I knew
so
that he was a founder. We talked about that with Chad one time.
Yeah, that's cool though.
And the Metter girls, we had the Metter staffing girls on here.
Yeah. So I'm going to be doing an Owner Origin podcast with Ben Metter. We released some new ones as we go. And I love it. Russell Yubera ended up being my very first one because after, doing the fireside chat and having more burning questions, I asked him if he'd come out and do it.
Oh, cool.
And so he did. And so it's been a lot of fun, and so, and the big emphasis there too is statistically out of, working Americans, which is like 220 million people or whatever the case may be, Department of Labor Statistics says on average, 6% of the working population owns an established business. So that means 94% of the population have a different mindset. And so I always tell people, business owners are cut from a different cloth. They see chaos. They see problems.
They want to go solve
or a lot of people see that. They see opportunity.
Yeah.
They see financial stress, emotional stress. They kind of put it on their shoulder and keep moving forward. Mm-hmm. They've got the burden of their employees and those families and who's responsible. They just keep plugging away. It's an incredible thing. And my dad always tells this story. My dad, I was 16 years old. My mom and dad are sitting there talking about this, that, and the other. And I go, hey, are we the last ones to get paid in this whole deal? My dad's like, yeah, you figured it out. That's right. We got to pay for everything, and whatever's left over is ours. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. But it's very, and so then when you talk to business owners, you recognize how much of a struggle and how much burden they carry, but yet they keep moving forward. And so for my job, working with high risk companies, and they got a lot of moving parts out there, out in industry, out on scaffold, doing a lot of different things. My mindset is, my core belief is peace of mind. What can I take off your plate so that I'll take care of this? I'll take care of the risk. I'll help you with safety. I'll help you with the contracts. You focus on what is your unique ability and spend 80% of your time focusing on that, so your business can continue to strive. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Get out of the way.
Speaking of your family business, every time I think, because you've done so much for me in my career, and then I'm reminded, I'm like, I basically put Steve through school because I invested quite a bit.
You went over there a lot
all the time growing up. So they had a donut shop here in the area. So when I found that out later in life, I was like, I don't know Steve anything.
Yeah.
I gave Steve tons of money.
I just love it. I just pictured, having not known him at this age, 16-year-old Steve's like, hey, are we the last one to get paid this time? What the hell's going on?
Yeah. Because I need money to go on Friday night.
I got a date, man. Pop's like, take her to the shop for date night.
Exactly.
Take her to the shop.
Yeah. The best
babe.
Breakfast date's the best.
I got sprinkles for you.
Yeah, that's right.
My dad would be like, yeah, you can go out as late as you want.
Yeah.
You're just going to be at the donut shop at 6 a.m.
That's right.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
Do whatever you want.
Yeah. You want to stay out till 2? Fine. I'll see you in 4 hours.
That's right. You better post tomorrow.
There was sometimes where you're like, this is going to be a tough one tomorrow.
This is going to be rough.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's hilarious.
All right. So before we wrap down, let's talk a little bit about something that you're really focused on right now.
Yes.
Legislatively, I think for those that are watching that are business owners, we'll be glad to hear it because it's good to know someone's championing the cause. But it's this what was it, nuclear verdicts? Tell us about that.
So nuclear verdicts are verdicts that value anything $10 million or more. And you say you don't like the sound of nuclear verdicts, try thermonuclear verdicts, which are verdicts that are over $100 million, which now there's a handful of those clearly across the country, and there's hundreds in the nuclear verdict size of things, but they're becoming too prevalent. And what is happening in many cases, and I tell everybody, I go drive down any road in Houston and tell me what the billboards say.
Yeah.
There's a lot of personal injury attorneys and a lot of people coming after your business and getting an attorney right away and suing. And it's not that if you're negligent and you're at fault and you're responsible for something, absolutely, obligated to pay, and insurance is there to cover it. But what has expanded and grown so much are the non-economic damages. There's such a huge spread now between, just straight up bodily injury to non-economic damages, which is what is pain and suffering? What is mental anguish? And are some of the medical costs and bills being inflated?
Oh.
And who's checking those things to make sure they're not out of balance? And so in 2025, we led a charge with legislation to approach that, and we got it all the way through to through the Senate and into the House, but it died in a committee at the House. And so, but I felt like we got a little late to the game in going after that. And so this go around, the Economic Alliance is very much involved, the Texas Truckers Association, ABC Texas with John Glaze. And so we're working on this now to get our white papers together, to get our legislators lined up on who's going to support it and putting it as an initiative. Because the thing you want to avoid that you don't want to happen, that happened in California and some other states, is they immediately say, ooh, insurance rates are getting too high. Let's cap them and tell them they can't raise rates beyond a certain percentage. Well, this is a free market capital, system. If you're running a business and somebody finally says, you can't charge more than a certain amount of rate,
You're gonna get out of there.
Yeah, they're gonna pull out, and then where does that leave you? Less options.
Yeah.
And so the insurance companies are running out of capacity, and so I don't have a bleeding heart for the insurance companies in terms of they charge a lot, but they're anticipating their actuarials, they're running numbers to see what they need in order to be profitable. And auto market is the worst thing right now that's happening. For the last 10 years, you ask any construction owner, any business owner, what does your auto rates look like? They're probably 3 times bigger than what they were.
Wow.
But then the compounding factor is, because we're talking about nuclear verdicts and talking about millions of dollars, your umbrella policies are following suit because now they're starting to pay out on claims. And so those rates are going through the roof. I mean, everything's good in the general liability world, the workers' comp world, and some of the other type of policies, but the auto and the umbrella, completely market driven and unsustainable for any business going forward. And so we've got a big initiative in 2027. We're gonna get some business owners to speak. I'll be glad to speak on behalf in front of committee and things to make sure the message is clear in support of small, medium-sized businesses that are suffering the most for this, because that's the backbone.
And I was going to add, just for the dummies in the room, but also maybe listening, they may not understand this world. What's the 1 or 2 key points we're trying to fight? So just cap the verdict level. What are we really trying to?
You want to know the caveat?
What are we happy with if we got through?
The most simplest thing we would be happy with our legislative bill would be to require the court or the judge to write up a summary or an explanation as to why there's such a big spread between the hard damages and the soft damages. Hard damages meaning you got property damage and you got bodily injury costs and everything. But now we're going from, we just paid $150,000 to fix all that, to now we're going to $150 million, or we're going to $15 million
for pain and suffering.
Pain and suffer, mental anguish. And here's a list of all of our medical costs, and they're inflated. So there's no, so we're going to push it back on the courts or the judges to say, explain that.
Yeah.
And
that's smart. That's not crapping on the people who are injured. That's saying, hey, we just want to know why you were spending this money.
Validate this.
Well, so
that's good.
I'll share a real
Accountability
story. I rear-ended this guy, and big giant like F-250, not giant, but big truck.
Yeah.
I'm in my car at the time, and I'm at a dead stop on 610, and I'm trying to scoot over, and I accidentally, literally, pushed the wrong like button, like because my car, I was trying to reverse, and I accidentally pushed drive. That's how so that tells you how close and how no momentum.
Yep.
Ding the dude, crushes in the front of my car because it's the front end,
Yep.
and then I hit his bumper guard. So there's nothing wrong.
Yep.
Dude gets out. I get a call from my insurance a month later. Lawsuit.
Yep.
The whole nine. Oh no, 100%. Same thing. And they're like, for whatever, $350,000, $500,000 is what they're trying to settle for this stuff. And I'm in my mind, right? I'll never forget telling the lady, she's like, well, you're covered, sir. It's not anything you need to worry about. And I was like, but I'm super furious. I'm like, there's no reason you guys should be paying this guy money.
Absolutely.
As a dead stop. But I'm imagining, right? I'm imagining, they're like, well, it cost this truck $2,000, but here's the $500,000 because he missed. And again, like I met the guy up front. I'm like, he didn't make $500,000 going to work. Yeah, like the pain and the suffering that he's going through. Like the guy got out. We talked, right? Like I was like, that guy's not suffering today, right? Like, and anyway. So
it's really
now
troubling.
Take that and multiply it times nuclear, right? And if it's that, so think the Lord you're going after that, man.
Oh yeah,
because we don't realize it, but and people are like, oh, the insurance companies are a business. They employ people. Mm-hmm. They have to protect themselves. They have actuaries. They have to take on inherent risk.
Yeah. Our space in this economic alliance world, it's a huge industry.
Yeah.
So all these members have insurance
that then pushes back on them. Yeah. And you're like, well, I pay all these premiums. You're like, well, dude, every time you make those choices, you're pushing it back on yourself, because to your point, it's either going to limit your options to where the cost gets inflated, or it's going to return on your premiums. So and that's what we're seeing. So don't get mad at the insurance company. Get mad at the people who are essentially not digging into it to understand what's happening. I love that call out. Make a judge sit down and actually have to write out a report and justify what they did versus stamping on
why
it.
there's such a spread.
It's going to change real quick. Yeah. I love that.
That's good.
Cool. Man, way to go, Steve.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, the workers' comp was worked on 20 years ago. It was unsustainable, unaffordable, and it took, I think, 5 or 6 legislative sessions to finally get it all resolved. I hope we don't go that far along the process, but it is a challenge trying to navigate and get all the right representatives to vote, get it approved without making modifications and changes, because that's what ends up happening.
And you guys are just pushing it to the state at this point.
Yeah, we're pushing it at the state. Absolutely. Yeah. Georgia passed a law that looks pretty good. Florida's passed a law. We didn't pass anything because they made a modification and it wasn't worth passing. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just a lot to navigate. But I love ABC's motto. Motto is get into politics or get out of business. Yeah, because politically, legislation-wise, it impacts you greatly.
For sure.
So, Steve, we're going to wrap up. That being said, you served in a meeting that I held last week. Great value add. I want to thank you for that.
No, absolutely.
You did an unbelievable job. We hosted a roundtable discussion with business owners, and you were a huge value add to that. And we talked about this nuclear verdict stuff, and a lot of the clients were excited about the work that we were doing. And so, if someone listening now and they want to reach out to you to get feedback on their risk and or how they could perhaps be a voice for you in this situation, maybe they've experienced something like this and they want to come tell their story as you approach this legislative bill, how does somebody reach out to you? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, I mean, you call my cell phone number, 832-250-2052, or email me. But
pretty active on LinkedIn too.
Yeah, active on LinkedIn. That's true. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I try and put some tips out there and things like that. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, fantastic. And so thank you for another great episode, right? It's always good to have you back. And
hopefully you took some things away from how to do a real podcast.
Absolutely. I've learned a lot. Thank you for the education.
Professionals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, how do we find the podcast, by the way? Find it. Owner's Origin.
Owner's Origin. We got links on YouTube.
It's so you Owner Origins or Owner's Origin?
Owner Origins.
Owner Origins.
I got to make sure.
Yeah, got it.
And we posted on this.
Associated
We
Builders
posted
and
on
Contractors.
the Economic Alliance LinkedIn page, right, Manny? Right. Okay. So the
Associated.
Economic Alliance posted his podcast as well, like they do ours. So that should be a way to find it.
Yep.
So come to our page on
Awesome.
LinkedIn.
Appreciate you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Steve, you're great.
Awesome.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you
you,
to
guys.
our audience as always. We appreciate you again. Really great example of how you leverage these organizations, get yourself involved, become an active participant, go out and make a difference. Steve's out there making a difference. If you want to get plugged in, you want to stay connected to myself, Zeke, reach out to us on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Again, and as always, we ask you to pay it forward. Help us grow our audience from 14 to perhaps 15 or 16. Send this message out and give us.
Steve's
let other
wife
people
and
know.
dad is going to listen to this
Yeah,
one at least. So,
absolutely. Yeah,
that'd be
please
good. Yeah.
tell them I'm their biggest fan. So we appreciate you guys and tune in next week.